Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Get Out of Rat. Today I'm joined by Jeanette Hunter, who is the contact center specialist at Jabra. And I'm sure, like me, you would have heard Jeanette talk at a contact center event. And today we're going to get the opportunity to hear Jeanette talk about her industry. She's a subject matter expert, and we're also going to find out about her career leading up to Jabra and all the things that Jabra are doing. So Jeanette, thank you very much for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting us.
Now this could be an interesting one because we've both discovered we're very similar in that we can start talking about something that we're passionate about, and then that bounces off into about 3 different other areas. Strap in, everyone.
Yeah, apologies in advance if I go wandering off down a different path than I intended.
But like I said, I've heard you talk a couple of times. I think you're always really interesting. And but where did it all start in this industry for you?
Blimey, that's going back a few years. So I never intended to work in a contact centre. I'm not sure many people do. I kind of left school, wasn't quite sure on what I wanted to do, and then fell into a job where I was picking up the phone and taking orders and speaking to customers day in, day out. And actually, I really enjoyed the atmosphere, the rapport, the team building, that sense of camaraderie. So kind of stuck at it. And actually, I was fortunate enough to work with some really great companies that, you know, have the ability to see, you know, maybe a bit of potential, to be able to encourage that and nurture it, and then, you know, kind of meandered my way through every single possible role that you could name in the contact center. So, you know, team leader, senior advisor, I've been manager, I've been heads of departments. I spent a brief period of time dipping in and out of data and being in MI analysis, and then went on to technological change and being able to build business cases and implement tech that makes a real difference either to the organization as a whole or to individual agents. And yeah, so kind of wandered my way throughout the contact center, really enjoying, you know, the structure, the people that I worked with, actually being able to delight customers whilst enriching what agents are doing as well. So it really was something I was passionate about, and met my other half in the contact center, and he was a contact center trainer, very dull conversations outside of work. And and yeah, that kind of led up to where I am now, which is obviously in the specialist role with Jabra.
There must be a startlingly high percentage of the guests that have come on this show that have met their other halves in the contact center. But something there you said that I think a lot of people are going to be nodding along to. 2 things. One, you never really expected to go for this job or stay in this sort of industry. But 2, it was the teamship and the esprit de corps, you know, that kind of the fun that you can have and being in amongst a team. Was that whilst you were on the phones as well? Was that you could feel it then?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's a hard job, and hats off to anybody that works in the contact center day in, day out. Picking up the phone and dealing with the customers is not an easy thing to do. And I don't think, if it wasn't for that sense of camaraderie and that sense of kind of fun and reward for what you're doing, I don't think anybody would stick at it. So yeah, absolutely, when I was on the phone. And then you've also got that element when you're on the phone of competition coming in as well.
Yes. Yeah, so the sense of competitiveness. Did you do all lines of business, or what were you, sales, service, a bit of everything?
A little bit of everything. So I was when I was on the phone, it was inbound. So it was actually energy comparisons in the 2008 price increase. I know a lot of people we look back on that period and still need wine to cope with it. But yeah, so that was when I was on the phones, and then I got promoted into a outbound team leader role, and the sense of it's a different breed, outbounders. I absolutely adore them, because it's driven by competition. It's driven by that hunger and that desire to outdo everybody around you. And then I moved into customer service and looked a lot around kind of CX, and at what point in the journey does the customer fall off the happy path, and what can we do to help support that, and maybe reduce contacts into the contact center that they needn't be there. So that was really fascinating, and the differences you can make by tweaks on the website and FAQs and changes in process and intelligent routing and OVR. Sorry, again, meandered off on a different path there.
No, I love that, because were you that kind of, when you were team leader and then you said you went to, I'm guessing, contact center manager, right?
I went to customer service manager before I went to contact center manager. Yeah, so I headed up the customer service team.
Did you, at that point, were you, again, because you just said in like one sentence then, just how your mind works around, the customer journey, and can we do something with the IVR? Can we do something with the website? And then you've still got to manage your team of people, right? And some contact centers where I've been allow you to have that freedom. They don't think, why is the manager suddenly talking to us about the website? But equally, I've been in places where they've kind of said, get back in your lane. You're just there to look after the people, make sure we meet our service levels. Is that kind of, what was your experience, is an easy way to say it.
So I mentioned earlier that I was really fortunate to have, that ability to progress and to develop. And we very much focused on kind of continuous improvement and how we can make changes. And I was a huge advocate of the agent, because quite often, agents aren't given enough credit. They know more than anybody else in the business what makes that business tick, what works well, what doesn't work for the customer, what improvements could be implemented simply that could actually make a real difference to either the customer experience, the agent experience, maybe the business overheads, that kind of thing. And it quite often you'll be missing that 360 feedback loop. So it's one of the things that I have always championed, is that agents need to have a platform to be able to give feedback to the wider business and then actually see changes being implemented off the back of that.
It's so true. I've heard you talk about that before as well, actually. I can always remember asking some of the senior team who were responsible for a script we had once, because I was in outbound, and I was the manager, and we weren't involved in the development of the script, but when we got it, we just knew straight away it wasn't fit for purpose, and it would confuse agents, confuse customers. It would just be, don't even worry about, forget about sales. It wasn't even that. It was just more that it was just horrific. And I just asked some of the people behind it just to come and spend some time, sat with the team, do nothing but just listen in and listen to them, really willingly try to make the script work, but to have the customers responding back going, what are you talking about?
Yep.
And it was, again, it's that if you'd have involved the team, and when I say the team, I mean kind of the customer facing team, in some of the development, we would have cut all this whole bit out and actually delivered a better service to what was, even in a week, like 1,000 customers, So I'm with you. And that kind of loop, that kind of desire to see the whole journey that includes agents, has that stayed with you as you kind of you went into other roles as well?
Absolutely. And definitely kind of when I went from looking at the customer service journey and how that worked for the customer into that project management, head of transformational change role, it was so important to actually have kind of like, it sounds a bit cheesy, but like a task force that involved different people within the organization. Because if it was something like a CRM system, it's how do people in different functions interact with it? Because I can put my call center hat on and my contact center hat on and go, we needed to do this, but that might not be what finance needed to do or business development needed to do. So it's so important to include different elements of the business when you're making any kind of major decision.
For people that are listening who are quite early on in their career and they hear you, then you're very self-deprecating, and that you just, oh yeah, and then I was head of transformation. But that kind of leaps and the seniority you've reached in your career, what advice would you give to people listening who might want to pursue a similar path and then maybe thinking, am I up for it? Can I do it?
That's a great question. Really great question, Martin. I wish I had a magic recipe that was like, you just need to do these things at this point. But it's
Mm,
more about kind of a willingness. It's not about, whether or not you know everything. It's about, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to support
mm,
people?
mm,
Um, and having that kind of attitude about wanting to just move up to the next stage. I find that as a contact center, as an industry, you do see that kind of progression a lot quicker maybe than in other roles. And I think it's a
yeah.
really great place. If you're hungry and you want to
Mm,
progress, just talk to your manager, let them know that you want more responsibility. You want, tell them that you want their job in the next 2 years, but, let them know that's something that you desire, and just
mm,
crack on and go for it.
I love that. I think because me and you have had such similar journeys and similar kind of experiences and outlook on the career. I'll often say to people, I think you spend too long thinking about the things that you can't do, so that you go, I'm not the finished article. I haven't enough management experience, or I don't know enough about the financials, and we kind of just gloss over our strengths because we don't like to talk about them. And if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, I don't think I can go for the role because I'm not the finished article. Newsflash, no one is. just kind of go for it, and you find your place, don't you? You fit into the role that you get, that probably feels a little bit scary at first.
Absolutely. And I find that all the time when you're doing something new, because I'm moving out of kind of contact center operations and into technology. It was a big change. It was a huge step change from what I was doing previously. And every time you need to do something that is outside of your comfort zone, and you're like, I don't know if I can do this, push on, because every time it challenges you, you're growing as an individual. And that's, every time I'm standing up and talking about contact center and I'm maybe feeling a little bit nervous inside, I know that I'm growing off the back of that, because it's
Mm,
something that is challenging me, and challenge is good. If you're forever in your comfort zone, you won't grow.
I love that. At what point did you move from operations to technology, and why? Just out of interest, or what was it?
Well, it was an interesting time. There was a lot of change going on in the contact center I was in, and the role had shifted more into product development, away from contact center operations. And whilst I love tech, and I can really geek out about tech for hours, but that wasn't where my heart lies. I want to be talking about operations, consulting about operations, um, providing thought leadership and having influence in that way, rather than maybe managing a team of developers and
Mm,
producing platforms. Um,
mm,
so it was the right time for me to take a break and spend a little bit of time with my kids. That actually it coincided with the start of the pandemic. So it was, whilst it was scary and we were all going through this kind of
mm,
massive change, actually it was really nice, because I got to be with my kids all the time, and having worked for the previous 20 years without a break, I didn't. And then I joined Jabra in the summer of the first year of the pandemic, and yeah, it's been a whirlwind ever since, really.
What's that whirlwind been like? What have you been doing?
It's very broad, and that's good, because I like a broad spectrum of responsibilities. If you have just one very small narrow channel, it can become quite repetitive. So I work with marketing, and I do a lot of work with the associations and
Mm,
speaking and conferences and things like that, which is great, because it's great to go out there and meet contact centers and talk about the challenges that they're facing. And they tend to have a very common theme, but they may differ slightly by industry or vertical. I also work with product marketing and our development to make sure that the products and the messages that we're delivering are actually, going to land really well. And I also work with our Jabra sales team as well, to, when they're talking to contact center customers, they'll quite often bring me into that conversation to kind of understand what the customer's challenges are, and maybe provide us a bit of advice whilst we talk about a solution as well.
mm. And I guess for you guys as well, the pandemic threw up a whole new set of challenges.
Absolutely. With everybody going home, the demand, we've never seen anything like it. Because obviously everybody needed new kit. It was like trying to get hold of a laptop or trying to get hold of a headset during the start of the pandemic was impossible. And we spend a lot of time talking to our contact center customers and to all of our customers across the board to understand kind of what their challenges are now and how does the new ways of working and hybrid working affect them. And we do a lot of surveys and data gathering to understand, actually, are people happy at home and do they have the right equipment to be able to work, so that we can actually help support and provide the right level of service to our customers.
And what a lovely position to be in, because I know when we've had some chats prior to this, we invariably just end up talking about the industry that we love and where we're at the moment. Your role lends itself to, like you say, you with all the associations, you're with your customers, you're also with, just in other locations where, such as a conference, such as webinars and forums and that kind of thing. What's, and this is a big question, but the overall kind of mood music like for our industry at the moment?
It's a tricky time in the contact center, and I think you'll probably agree with that as well.
Yeah.
We've tried to put it into an easily condensed version. There are a lot of challenges at the moment around agent retention and attrition rates, and that has a huge impact on the wider business. It's driven by the cost of living. It's being driven by different requirements from a new generation that's coming in. Generation Z have very different expectations of the working world than we've seen previously. It's being driven by a need for high autonomy on where and when they work. And all of these things are leading to agent attrition rates being really high, which in turn leads to just a knock-on effect of a problem, because you're constantly backfilling. So you've got agents that are quite young in the life cycle, which means that they're not delivering as much as, say, a fully seasoned worker would, or a fully tenured worker. Then you've got a lack of succession planning as well. So if people aren't sticking around, where does that next level of middle management come from? Where do your team leaders come from and your senior advisors? So it's such a challenging time for the contact center, and yeah, I can't see it easing in the short term.
It seems to me a little bit like it's, because I love what you said then about which generation is it? Are we saying it's Z?
I think it's
I always, yeah.
Sorry.
The further away I get from it, the harder it is to remember which letter it is. But I loved what you said about the kind of the autonomy of when, where, and I guess how they, big generalization, but how they prefer to work is fascinating, because it seems to me like we're in a bit of a race, that there's so much advancement in really great technology, conversational AI and digital assistants, that it means that actually when it gets to an agent, you want the agent to be a problem solver and have to deal with that nuanced emotional situations and really plug into them as critical thinkers and expert, and that human element, which would be a far more interesting role than just transactional. But but if we can't deliver that consistently across the board soon, then because we already are struggling to attract talent, aren't we? So it's about how we do that on scale, whilst also accommodating people that probably might want to say, you know what, I like it, I like the vibe, I like the fact I can progress quickly, I like the fact that I can get involved with cutting edge technology, but I don't fancy doing this for 8 hours a day, thanks. I've got a side hustle, I've got this, I'm gonna do this, so I can give you 2.5 hours today, 3 hours on a Wednesday, and I think that kind of agility, we're going to have to reflect that agility
No, I completely agree. It's a huge step change from where we were previously around, people not wanting 0-hour contracts and people, wanting to have a fixed 8-hour a day. We're not there anymore. And that becomes really challenging about how do you provide a rota around that? How do you staff for your peaks? Because it's incredibly hard to make sure that you're delivering those SLAs, even when you've got X number of 37.5 hour a week FTE. But if you're then having to plot around, an agent that wants to give you 14 hours one week and maybe 10 hours the week after, it's just almost impossible.
How does this all, with the development that you guys are doing, and I know you're very conscious of the social element of what you do, and being kind of positive role models within our ecosystem and all of that kind of stuff. But from a tech point of view, is that a distraction and that you just got to keep going on and developing tech, or do you have to consider it, especially when you have home workers and all of that kind of thing, or does it not really come into play?
We're always in our product development team, we're always looking at kind of what are the current challenges at the moment. And then trying to, obviously if there are very specific challenges, we may not be able to produce something that covers just that.
Exactly, yeah. You can't recruit agents.
Yeah, but the thing like the most common complaint that we hear from contact centers is background noise, and that actually is the same whether they're in the office or working from home. It's just a different type of background noise, because in the office you'll have the kind of general, depending on the size of the contact center, hubbub, or roar of the conversation going on around. But at home it may be a dog barking or the doorbell going or the washing machine kicking into spin cycle in the background. So we try and make sure that when we're developing a product, we go, right, well, what are the current challenges? How can we produce something that covers both that hybrid scenario? Because we know that, as much as contact centers would love to get everybody back in to build that rapport and to, nurture those relationships, I just don't think it's going to happen. Hybrid, I think, is here to stay, and it's being driven by people's requirements of autonomy.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, so do you think then it's never going to be like it was before the pandemic?
I don't think it will be. I don't think that we'll see it exactly the same way it was. I think now that people have had that freedom to work from home, there'll always be a requirement that they can have a couple of days where they just don't, they can work in their pajamas and not have to go into the office. But there'll still be that element of
needing.
Who doesn't like that? I love it. Shoes? What are shoes? But yeah, but needing to go into the office to still have that ability to collaborate and to bounce ideas off people and just generally have that banter. I love going into the office, but sporadically.
And when I don't want to steal your thunder because we're both talking at the expo. What's the title of your talk?
We are looking at well-being in agents and how technology can help protect your frontline workers.
Brilliant. I don't want to. Can you talk about any of that or not?
Well, that's giving out spoilers, isn't it?
I know. Maybe call it teasers or a trailer.
Or a teaser. Okay. How do I talk about it? We've kind of skirted around a lot of kind of the lead, the start of the session in this conversation, which is about how difficult it is for contact centers at the moment. And the main problem that they're focusing on is agent well-being, agent mental health and agent engagement, because if you can't delight your customers if you've got no agents to do so.
No.
And then we talk about how technology can help impact that, and how technology can be leveraged, whether it's in the office or whether it's at home as well.
Well, I'm definitely, as long as it's not at the same time as mine, I'm definitely going to be there. And I promise I won't heckle.
That would be good. That would be, although it may break the ice.
Yeah, Do you just talking about speaking, has it been with Jabra? Is that the first time that you've done it, or did you do it before?
I've not done speaking in the same way that I have with Jabra. So before, it would be kind of addressing contact center agents or managers, delivering training, trainer sessions, that kind of thing. So there's always been an element of having to stand up and talk to people, which is fine. That's no problem. The outbound pre-shifts were always my favorite, as you
Yeah,
can
me
imagine.
too.
But yeah, from a Jabra point of view, it kind of calls on, there was a brief period where I did some consultancy, and really just kind of, how do I pull from my experience and try and share some knowledge that people may find helpful.
Mm. Do you get nervous?
Yeah, I do. But I think nerves are good, because if you weren't nervous, to me, it shows that you don't care. So
Mm.
my nerves is driven by the fact that I'm maybe somewhat of a perfectionist, and I want to do things really, really well. So that's, it's good to have those nerves.
Definitely. Well, you mentioned it before, because that's a sign that you're developing, because you are definitely not in your comfort zone if you're feeling nervous about undertaking an activity.
Exactly. It's all growth, isn't it? So every time I do something new, every time I'm doing something that, is pushing those nerves inside of me, I'm growing my career, I'm growing my skill set, and hopefully, increasing the amount that's on my CV, increasing my range of skills. It's all about development. And
Mm.
that's always been the
Yeah.
way that I like to be managed, and I like to manage others. It's not necessarily just what's happening now. It's, where are we taking you? How do we progress together along this route?
Mm. I love that. I think that's brilliant. When you look ahead to the future of our industry, and what you guys are up to, what excites you the most?
Tech. And there's that inner geek coming out with me again. There's a lot of very clever technology that's out on the market at the moment, and due to come out on the market. We've ourselves have just launched our first ever AI software that looks at emotion, and looks at not what's being said, but how it's being said. So it's looking at the engagement levels of the customer with your brand, and at the agents with the process of what they're doing on a day in, day out basis. And these kind of developments are really, really exciting, because you can actually see, it's not about, here's a product, how can we sell it? It's about, here's a product, look at the benefits that brings. And I
Mm.
love having those conversations.
So just say that again. It's the AI, within headsets, or within kit, or
So it uses the voice signal through a digital headset, obviously through a Jabra digital headset, which then analyzes the tone of voice. So it's looking at the pace, the tone, the intonation, and the volume to
wow.
provide a real time. So it's not post call, it's real time happening. The agent sees it, the management can see it. Score of how engaged the agent is with dealing with that customer, and also how engaged the customer is with your agent and with your brand.
Wow, that's brilliant. Because I guess then straight away now my mind's going, like you said, this could happen with both of us. Could you look at then specific call outcomes, or you could look at complaints, for example, and say how do they differ? And
Well, the use case that kind of appeals to me the most, if I put my old contact center manager hat on. So in the old days, I used to be able to sit at my desk, and I would hear an agent's voice coming up, and you'd be like, okay, that agent's got a nasty customer on the phone, or a grumpy customer.
mm,
And you'd kind of be like, is she dealing with it? Is it all going okay? And then maybe you take a wander over there. How's that call going? And then the phone would go down, and the agent would burst into tears. And that
mm,
happened quite frequently. I mean, you've probably experienced it as well.
yeah,
And then at that
yeah.
point, you take them off for a cup of coffee, or they go outside to the
Everyone got
smoking
used to
area.
me crying in the end, though.
But you would kind of have a bit of a debrief post that call. You'd sit
Mm,
with them and talk about
yeah,
what happened, and make sure that they were okay to carry on with what they were doing. You wouldn't just be like, oh, pull yourself together, crack on.
yeah. Mm.
if you put that into a hybrid scenario and they're working from home, how do you see that happening? How do you
Mm,
know when the agents had that call if they don't come and tell you? And
mm,
then what happens is they'll hang up the phone, they'll be really upset, but they'll just crack on. And then they'll take it out on the customer and the customer after that. And then it's a bit of a vicious cycle. Actually, with our system, you can set alerts. So if a customer comes in hot, if they're angry, you can actually get an alert from your system straight away that says, agent Sarah has got a customer on the phone that's really cross, so that you can be
mm,
there on Teams going, are you okay? Do you need me to help? Do you need to escalate this? And
mm.
just provide them with that level of support, but also
That's
jump on a
great.
call with them after that call's finished to
Mm.
provide that debrief. So it doesn't then become a, an agent sitting at home, dealing with horrible customers, hating what they're doing, you know, looking for a new job when they're not on calls, that kind of thing.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I love that, because you're going to be you're going to be less inclined. Let's say you only catch up with your team leader at the end of your shift, and this happened in the middle of the day. As long as you've got back on taking calls, you kind of less. You might say, "Oh, yeah, I had an awful call earlier," but the damage is still being done, isn't it? Because that is exactly as to your point. This is, unless you've got somebody reminding you that they're few and far between. Let's see. I'm sure there was nothing you could have done differently, but I'm here for you. This happens, all that kind of stuff. Rather than people just going, right, yeah, this isn't for me. I can't do it.
Yeah, it's kind of the difference between a culture where support is provided post those
Mm,
calls, or a culture where it's an expectation that they just happen and you need to deal with that. And
mm,
again, it comes back to this kind of different expectations of different generations. And, they've all got their side hustles. Are they going to stick around having customers shout at them?
mm,
Well, actually, they could be doing something else. So
mm.
I think it's really, really important that we look at not just, how do we manage an agent, but how do we manage an agent expectation and experience as a whole? And where can we provide additional support? And there's lots of talk about mental health support, mental health first aiders, employee assistance, that kind of thing. It's about that support piece and that nurturing in a way.
I love that. How do you how can you use it for just more generic coaching?
Oh, absolutely. And it's really, really helpful. I presume at some point you will have lost hours of your life, like I have, at trying to find calls. That horrible
Yeah.
just searching through call after call, trying to find those really good calls for coaching or those really bad ones. Actually, this just gives them all to you in a nice neat, here are your bad calls, here are your really good calls. And it becomes then a much more focused experience about how do we provide the right level of coaching. Do
Mm.
we want to be really listening to the same call over and over and over again at random? Well, actually, should we be looking at, where do we need to provide that level of support? And here are our, exceptional calls that we can use as coaching examples.
This is great. This is brilliant, because something, you're not talking about just a headset here, are you? Talking about a whole way of being able to manage your team. Because it's always struck me as odd, actually, that we as an industry, we don't spend enough time looking at our how the communication tools, our voices, how good we are at listening, and spending the majority of our time focusing on that. And this is going to give even inexperienced team leaders plenty of meaningful data or actionable data that they can have good coaching conversations with their team.
Exactly. There's I come from a background where you pick a calls at random, and it may be 2-3 calls per agent per week,
Mm,
something like that. And
mm,
it's a tiny snapshot that you use to go, well, that agent is doing a good job, or that agent needs
mm,
support, or that agent,
mm.
is my best. It's a tiny snapshot, but you actually get a 100% view of everything that's going on, all the calls, all the scores. And it's really, you can have, at times in the contact center, you can have too much data. You've got data being churned out of every
Yeah.
system. It's all retrospective, so it's all happened in the past. You can't do anything to fix it. This is data that's actually really valuable on a real-time basis as well. But
Mm.
like I said, I'm a geek. I can waffle for hours.
That's fine. Keep going. But it is something, and again, you mentioned in your kind of journey that you did actually spend some time in MI as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. Trying to, it was, I think it was for about a couple of years that it was MI and performance improvement. So it was looking at all the data that's being churned out of the system, but also the policies and the processes that sit behind that as well. And trying to understand what picture the data is painting. Because if you don't have a way to consume the data, it all becomes meaningless. So it was, you know, pivot table after pivot table after pivot table until it actually created this picture of, well, actually, there's a problem here that we need to address. And actually, if we just put this step in the process, it resolves that problem. So it was a great job because it was there was a huge amount of autonomy around what I did. I had a target of a 10% improvement, whether that was through agent time saving or you know, 10% uplift on the bottom line, but it was a 10% target, and that was my remit. And it was great. I got to dip into every single process and go, actually, we can make some improvements here, and involving people within those teams to make sure that, you know, it was met with acceptance rather than resistance. And, you know, it was a great time. It was a really good time. It helped kind of round off my knowledge of the contact center, because it wasn't specifically a department I was running. I sat over the processes of every department.
Well, that kind of spread of experience is definitely helpful for us in the industry now, with your kind of bringing that to bear and talking and helping to influence thought leadership at a time when we're going to need it, and we're going to need that, the sort of technology as well that you guys are bringing, but with a real focus on agents. So we're going to have to talk about this again, definitely.
Absolutely.
And just to see fast forward a few months or a month or so and see where we're at. But Jeanette Hunter from Jabra, thanks very much for coming on the show. I've really enjoyed it.
You're very welcome, Martin. Thanks ever so much for having us.
And see you at the expo.
Absolutely. And feel free to heckle.
Good. Well, likewise. Thank you.
Fab. So how was that?